Why did you decide to have Nick Fuentes on?
Nick Fuentes is one of those figures that everybody, like Putin, that's why I interviewed Putin. Everyone talks about this person, but nobody, I believe, one of my missions, this is not everyone's mission, it just happens to be mine at this stage of my life, is I want to hear what people think.
A strikingly large number of Muslims would like to see it supplant civil law in the countries in which they live.
Sharia law is bad, Seth. I don't know if you've heard that. It's bad. It's worse than what's happening in New York and Detroit. It's just bad.
I don't know of a single Gulf country where it's illegal to proselytize on behalf of another religion. I think that in every Muslim majority country in the world, non-Muslims are treated, have fewer rights.
And you can tell when you go to a place like Abu Dhabi or Riyadh, like, oh man, I hope we don't ever wind up with a society like this, with a rape rate of 0, where you leave your keys in your Lamborghini and don't ever worry about it being stolen.
So you often hear people say, well, Sharia is intolerant, women are treated badly, gays are treated badly. Women have, in the Quran, fewer rights than men do.
Okay, did you guys know that when he started the Tucker Carlson network, do you know who started up the funding of his network? This is public knowledge. The guy's name, he runs a company called 1789 Capital, an investment firm that was founded by Omid Malik. He funded the launch of the Tucker Carlson network. He's a Muslim man. $15 million he gave to Tucker Carlson. Many other credible sources are saying that since January, Qatar, wealthy Islamic nation, is funding Tucker Carlson.
If you give me $15 million, I might not think Sharia law is that bad either. Welcome to Tearing Down High Places. My name's Average Joe. Got all the pastors in the house this week. Pastor Tim, Pastor Jeff, and of course, coming from Minnetonka, Seth Brickley. Pastor Seth Brickley. How are you, sir?
It's great to be with you guys. December is upon us. We have about 8 inches of snow on the ground right now. So winter has arrived here. But it's a blessing always to be with you guys.
I'm gonna have to say, guys, are we ready for this? Because we didn't talk about this exactly, but we kind of hinted toward it. Are you ready? On 3, 2, 1. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, Seth Brickley. Happy birthday to you.
Oh boy, that was so. Who was the bass there, and who was the tenor? Or one of you sounded like more alto.
All I can say is, Lordy, Lordy, look who's almost 40.
Oh boy, you did the math, huh? Yeah, no. Yeah. One more year. My wife is already planning my over the hill party next year, so we're getting a head start on that. But yeah, no, it's good to be alive, and yeah, I mean, 39 today, and yeah, we're getting to, midlife here. So this is interesting. But someone told me today that he says this is the prime because you still feel your youth and you can have wisdom too at this stage in your life. And where as you get older, you lose your physical body, but hopefully you grow in wisdom, right? So but, yeah. So thank you guys. I did not expect that. So well, thank you.
I was trying not to talk to you about your birthday when we were talking before the show. So okay. I'm like, oh gosh, all I want to do is say happy birthday, but oh well. Since it's your birthday, Seth, then since it's week 1 and this is what we do on week 1, why don't you tell us what we're talking about today?
Yeah, I know it's such a serious topic on my birthday, but this is tearing down the high places. So that's what we do here. We tear down high places.
What do you want to tear down?
Yeah, so I want to talk today about Tucker Carlson, who I think is one of the most listened to people in America, not just in America, but all over the world. And this is a man who a number of years ago, I deeply appreciated, deeply loved, was helped by him. In fact, every single evening I would watch his monologue because I thought it was that good. And I thought, he hit the nail on the head consistently. This was during COVID. He called out social justice and Black Lives Matter. He defended the January 6th people who were taking advantage of it. So I really appreciated how he spoke the truth on those things. And about a year ago, I was in my church here, and I was talking about those who I felt like, unlikely voices that the Lord was using. And I mentioned his name to a lady in my church. And this lady in my church said to me, "Have you heard recently what he's been saying about Israel?" And I had not at that time. This was a year ago. And so I started to pay closer attention, and I started to listen and then talk to people too who were listening to him. And I started to realize there's something seriously wrong here about what he's saying. And then I'm convinced here as I stand before you in December of 2025 that I believe there's a dark agenda that he has pushed. And, here on Turning on the High Places, we need to call this out and say, this is wrong. This is unbiblical. We hope our prayer would be that he would repent and turn from this. So yeah, we're going to explain what he's done over the last year or two.
I'm looking forward to that. I actually have the complete opposite opinion, but I think it's going to be an interesting conversation, and we'll see where it goes.
Okay.
So, what do you want to lay out for us as far as evidence of this?
Oh, sure. Yeah. So when we look at the Bible, we need to consider, okay, Satan has an agenda. We know that. He's active. 1 Peter 5:8 says that the devil prowls around like a roaring lion, seeking someone to devour. Ephesians 6:11 says that we need to be aware of the schemes of the devil. He's always scheming. He's always coming up with different plans. And we know from John chapter 8 that he's a liar and he's the father of lies. So he's what Satan does is he uses certain human instruments to push forward his agenda. One of his agendas that goes back 4,000 years is his hatred, his utter hatred of the people of Israel. And it goes back to about 2000 BC when the Lord promised to Abraham and to his offspring that he was going to bless them. He was going to make a great nation out of them. He was going to give them the land from the river Euphrates to the river of Egypt, and this would be their everlasting possession. And one thing that you hear people say, and I love to say this, is you're never going to meet a Hittite, a Hivite, a Jebusite, an Amorite, an Ammonite, all these different peoples that were around at that time. But remarkably, here we are 4,000 years later, and the people of Israel are still among us. And they are still among us because God is not done with them. God has great plans for them. And what I want to say here is that you don't need to be a dispensationalist to even say this. I was talking to Dr. Russell Fuller, whom we've had on this podcast before. Dr. Russell Fuller, he believes in the future salvation of Israel, even though he's an amillennialist. In fact, after the Reformation period, the universal opinion on Romans 11 is that the natural branch that comes out of the olive tree is referring to ethnic Israel. So that when Romans 11:26 says that all Israel will be saved, what this is communicating is that when Jesus returns, there's going to be a large number of Jewish people who are going to believe in their Messiah. They will look on me whom they have pierced, as it says in Zechariah. Right? And Jeff pointed this out at the men's retreat in September, that even though in one sense they are enemies of God because they've rejected Christ, and they of course rejected him the first time when he came, even though this is true, at the same time they are also beloved. They are beloved, and they are beloved because God is not done with them, right? God's promises are to them. So we as Christians, we as Gentile Christians, we should love the people everywhere that we come across. We should love our fellow brothers and sisters in Christ. But we should also have a special love for the people of Israel because God has a special love for them. So the reason I say all that is because Satan hates the people of Israel. And he hates the people of Israel because he hates God. He hates God's plans for them. He hates what they mean. God has, even though many wicked actors over the last several thousand years have tried to wipe them off the face of the earth, God has preserved them. And we see this, right? Pharaoh tried to annihilate them. You see this in the story of Esther in the Bible. You see this with Antiochus Epiphanes before the time of Christ. He tried to annihilate the Jewish people. You see this numerous times down through history, most recently in the 20th century with the Holocaust, when Hitler sent them away on boxcars and took them to concentration camps in order to rid the world of this supposed poison on the earth, the Jewish people. You see 1972, the Munich Olympics, the Palestinians, the terrorist attack that they did on the Israeli wrestlers during that Olympics. We've seen it more recently with radical Islam. There are nations in the Middle East where their stated goal is to wipe Israel off the face of the earth. One of those is Iran. And of course, we know Hamas, their goal, they reside the Gaza region. Their goal is to wipe Israel off the face of the earth. Well, why is that? It's because Satan hates these people, and their presence in this land, this ancient land, the land of Canaan, the land of promise, Satan absolutely hates. Okay, so everybody listening to this right now needs to understand this background when we consider the rhetoric against this nation state of Israel and the Jewish people in general. Okay, so when I hear someone with strong rhetoric against Israel, I immediately, because I'm thinking biblically, I'm thinking, okay, this is the work of the devil. Now, this doesn't mean we can't critique them, right? We've talked about this before on this podcast.
Sure.
The nation state of Israel, they have frowned upon evangelism to the Jewish people that are there. Okay, we should vehemently oppose that. There's other
Hey,
things.
spit on them.
Yeah, there's other things they do that we can say that's horrible. But we also have to understand the dynamics at work in the Middle East. We have to understand that this is so interesting. This is so helpful for us to understand as Americans. When we think about America, when we think about the Democratic Party, we know that the Democratic Party has lied to their voters, basically saying, these people have oppressed you. Specifically black voters, they've said this. They say this to immigrants as well. They are oppressing you. You need to vote for us because we're going to help you out, right? The same thing's happening in the Middle East with Hamas. They lie to their people. They say from their youth, Israel is this evil nation. They want to kill you. They're these horrible people. So they're training their people from their youth to believe these false things. Okay, so where does Tucker come into this? Well, again, I never heard Tucker say any of this until the last year or two. So I don't. Some people have brought up clips of him in the past saying he's pro-Israel. So he has not always held these views that he's now presenting.
I think he is pro-Israel.
Yeah. Okay. Well, yeah. I'm going to demonstrate very clearly that that's not the case.
Okay.
So when any dangerous teaching is pushed, there's always wolves who push the false information. Okay. Matthew 7:15 says that. They always present themselves as those with good motives, but their bad fruit is revealed to those who are discerning. So we as Christians, especially as pastors need to be discerning because we have a responsibility to our people. Okay. So
I get to be average. It's nice.
Okay. Well, so my goal here, Average Joe, is to persuade you here. Okay.
Please do.
Now, we often think of, again, I don't know. I mean, what he's done, I believe, is dangerous because I think it is deceptive. We talk about this with the social justice stuff. When you look at Joel Osteen and then you look at Tim Keller, who's more dangerous? we've talked about this before on this podcast. I believe Tim Keller is more dangerous than Joel
Agreed.
Osteen because Joel Osteen's more obvious.
Even in death, he's more dangerous.
Yeah. So
He posts a lot, even though he's dead. I don't know how it happens, but it's crazy.
Yeah, so we need to have discernment. So who's more dangerous, Nick Fuentes or Tucker Carlson? Okay, let's ask the same question here. Now, Nick Fuentes has said horrible things.
Whoa. Well, there's all right. I agree with everything you said previously because I am a dispensational partial preterist. So, but that being said, let's not throw Tucker under. Let's say what he said before you say he's more dangerous than someone else. You're presupposing that he's dangerous in that last statement. We haven't heard anything about what he has said that is dangerous yet.
I'm going to share that right now. Okay.
Awesome.
Okay. So, again, there's a spectrum of people who are pushing kind of the anti-Israel rhetoric. You have on one end, you have Cory Muller. He said, Hitler is his hero. Dietrich Bonhoeffer was a villain. He has said things like that. He's on the Stone Choir podcast. Of course, you have Nick Fuentes, who calls himself America First. These guys have large followings, especially Nick Fuentes. He has a massive following. But most people don't consider these legitimate voices. They're not in the mainstream. And this is why I think Tucker's more dangerous, because he is in the mainstream. He has mainstreamed really dangerous ideas toward Israel because he has had credibility in the past. He had a show on Fox News, Tucker Carlson Tonight.
What did he say?
So he has pushed this ideology in several ways. One of them is by having highly questionable people on his program. And instead of grilling them for their outlandish views, he has performed the interviews as if he agrees. And the most recent one was with self-proclaimed neo-Nazi Nick Fuentes. And by the way, Nick Fuentes, one of his heroes is Joseph Stalin. So you get kind of an idea what kind of guy this guy is. And Nick Fuentes, he's a leader of the Groyper movement. For those of you who maybe have you, Tim and Jeff, have you kind of looked into that at all? Kind of this white supremacist, a lot of young men are really drawn to it. So Tucker's doing these interviews with these, again, I'm going to name some more people here, but didn't really push back with Nick Fuentes, even though the number of items Carlson could have vigorously questioned him on are too many to count. Carlson has interviewed Darryl Cooper. Darryl Cooper is a pseudo-historian. Pseudo meaning he's not a real historian because he rewrites history. It's ridiculous what he has said. He describes a different story about the Holocaust, minimizing Hitler's evil and pointing the finger at Churchill, calling Winston Churchill the chief villain of World War II. You heard me right. To show his approval of Cooper, Carlson said this. He said that Darryl Cooper is the greatest and most honest historian in America. Wow. He has also interviewed several pro-Hamas guests claiming that Israel has run American foreign policy in the Middle East for decades, while saying the Israeli military has participated in ethnic cleansing in the Gaza region. Carlson stated in one of his newsletters that Netanyahu controls the United States military. This is what he said. This is an exact quote. Unnamed Washington sources expressed concern over Israel's ability to fend off Iran's retaliation, which would inevitably lead to Benjamin Netanyahu ordering the American military to step in and fight on his country's behalf. Okay, so he said that before Donald Trump sent the missiles into Iran to blow up their nuclear facilities. Basically, he's saying Netanyahu controls Trump. Netanyahu controls the United States military.
What did he say? Yeah, he said that the United States military is controlled by Israel.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
All right.
Statements such as these tell us that Carlson's teaching his audience that the Jews are truly the ones in control. And this is a view that's been held for many, many years, but has really become mainstream. Even Nick Fuentes, in the interview that Tucker did, he called it organized Jewry. That the Jews they're really the ones who run the world. Behind this deep state, the Jews are the ones really pulling the strings.
Who
Behind
said that?
all this.
Was that Tucker?
Well, he interviewed Nick Fuentes on his program. Said,
Oh, that was another Nick Fuentes. Okay.
Yep, Nick Fuentes said that. Yep.
Right.
But again, Tucker didn't push back. So, Tucker has given soft interviews to leaders in the Iranian and Qatar governments, even though they are strongly for the advance of Islam in the West. Interestingly, his most
Putin too. He interviewed Putin.
Yeah, that was a soft interview as well. Yep.
You know who else he interviewed? He interviewed cannibals. He went into Africa and he interviewed people that were cannibals. And you know what? He didn't scold them about their cannibalism, although he's very against cannibalism.
Okay. I didn't know that. But yeah, he stated that Hamas is not, okay, listen to this one. They're not a terrorist group, but a political organization. That's an exact quote. And he's, okay, so think about that. Hamas. This is common knowledge for anybody who knows anything about the Middle East. In fact, Marco Rubio even said the other day, if we find out that someone comes to America and we find out that person is pro-Hamas, we're not going to let them stay here. They can't be in that. They can't be in.
But aren't they both? Aren't they both because they were elected by the Palestinian people? They were elected into office.
I'm not sure. I mean, they are a terrorist organization. So
100%.
Yeah.
They got elected. Kind of like Hitler got elected.
Yeah.
Hitler is a terrorist. He got elected too. So,
yeah. But this is very important to understand. Tucker Carlson does not believe they're a terrorist organization, and yet has said that the Israeli military is a terrorist organization, as they have committed ethnic cleansing in the Gaza region. Okay, so so when people say, because when people like me call people out on this, they say, well, I guess we can't criticize Israel. No, you can criticize Israel. You can't slander Israel. Just like you can't slander anybody else. You can't tell lies about a nation that has ethics. Just like we, America, when we go to war, historically, we are a military that has ethics. We don't target civilians.
Yeah. Wow.
Israel does not target civilians. And now Tucker has said that they do not target civilians. Now
that's a fact. That is a really good question because there are, I mean, if you listen to people on the left and you listen to news media on the left, they're all saying that. I have no idea if it's true.
Yeah. Tucker should interview someone he should interview Amir Sarfati, a man who served in the Israel military, who actually knows what's going on there, who actually knows how bad Hamas is.
Yeah.
He won't do it. I mean,
Why wouldn't he do it? I think he would. He's interviewed crazy people. He's interviewed Putin and cannibals. And I think one of the things that we're overlooking is that when you invite someone on your podcast, and we've all experienced this, where I'm hoping I'm not the only person that has disagreed with people we've had on this podcast and held their tongue back, because I have many times. I think we had the Ukrainian pastors on. I didn't agree with most of what they said. Now, I didn't dispute their facts that they were presenting about the Ukrainian war, about the abuses of their people. But what I disagreed with was their desire to have the U.S. government fund their operations and to fund them based on the fact that they were morally superior to the other side. I don't believe that under Christian just war theory, we should be funding any country's military outside of our own, because we don't have the right to take the children of Americans and spend that blood on other nations. We just don't have that right under Christian, and we have to be consistent. If we're going to be consistent under just war theory, that is the bigger issue. Additionally, I think when we start pushing weapons like, Trump recently was saying to Putin, "Hey, I'm going to give the Ukrainians these missiles. They're really bad. Come on, let's negotiate." He was doing that as a negotiating tool. However, once you're committed to sending certain types of weapons to your enemy, to someone's enemy, you become their enemy too. So now you're putting American troops in harm's way. You're spending American blood on a foreign war, and that I think has been, through Christian just war theory through the centuries, has not been okay.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I know that Tucker's an isolationist, which means kind of just don't get involved in any wars. Now with Trump's attacks, now Tucker said it was going to be World War III when we sent missiles into Iran and blow up the nuclear capabilities, which was just such an alarmist comment. And yeah, so he obviously that did not happen. Trump's pattern in his first term and in his second term is missile strikes. He doesn't send in troops. He's against endless wars. Trump's foreign policy actually makes sense. Tucker Carlson's it comes from someone who has never really, he's never run a business. I mean, honestly, he just espouses opinions. That's what he does. Trump runs businesses. Trump runs a country. He knows what he's doing. So thankfully, Trump doesn't listen to this nonsense. But anyway, so Sharia law. Tucker Carlson doesn't think that Sharia law is that bad. He has said that on his program. Okay.
I can't imagine that.
Let me
I would
jump
love
in
to
on
see that clip.
Okay, that is with Glenn Greenwald. So
Okay.
watch the YouTube interview, Glenn Greenwald. It's very recent. And he actually mockingly laughs at the idea, like, oh, because we've always been told Sharia is bad. And then he goes on to say, he does this cackly laugh. And then he says something like, I'm more concerned about, X, Y, or Z versus some girl in Pakistan who can't go and, get her PhD in gender studies. Ha, ha, ha. His laugh. But he's completely minimizing the danger of Sharia law. And I would just say to this, let me just jump in.
That's a problem.
That is so problematic.
Mhm.
The sons of Issachar, right? In 2 Chronicles, they understood the times and they knew what they ought to do. If we understand what's happening in Dearborn, Michigan, in Paterson, New Jersey, in the birth rates of Muslim immigrants, now the birth rates come down when they immigrate to Western countries, but they're still well above the secular humanist Westerners by far. And, just the birth rates here in the West. If we understand the real danger, it is Islam. We have to fight that. And he completely minimizes Islam and the danger of Sharia in order to put down Israel as the globalist threat behind the scenes. Yeah, that's the one that got me.
Jeff, would you attribute any of that to him being a baby Christian?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I think he's got this like Anglican, Episcopalian, it's not Bible centered. I think he said just recently that he read through the Bible for the first time in his life.
Yeah, about a year and a half ago, a couple of years ago, something like that. Yep.
Yeah, so
which
he
is awesome.
Just doesn't. Yeah, but it's also the fact that the way our culture works, the person who can present the best, who's funny or interesting or has access to Putin and, world leaders and interesting people, these people have the platform.
Yeah.
No longer by merit necessarily or knowledge. The worldview of Tucker Carlson is influencing everything he says, but it's not formed by the Bible. He doesn't understand Romans 11.
Correct.
He dismisses dispensationalism and blames us who hold to biblical categories about Israel and blames us when he himself is the one who doesn't understand these things at all.
I'm going to guess he doesn't know the word dispensationalism, and he's a bright guy. He's a really smart guy.
I'll bet he knows dispensationalism.
You think?
Yeah.
Maybe he does.
Yeah, well, that's why the reason I wanted to,
at a shallow level, right? I'm not, when I say he doesn't know dispensationalism, I'm saying he doesn't know it in any depth. It's the nuances between dispensationalism and covenant theology are just not going to be hit.
Listen to this one. Okay, did you guys know that when he started the Tucker Carlson network, do you know who started up the funding of his network? This is
Qatar.
This is public knowledge. The guy's name, he runs a company called 1789 Capital, an investment firm that was founded by Omid Malik. He funded the launch of the Tucker Carlson network. He's a Muslim man. $15 million he gave to Tucker Carlson. Many other credible sources are saying that since January, Qatar, wealthy Islamic nation, is funding Tucker Carlson.
If you give me $15 million, I might not think Sharia law is that bad either.
Exactly.
Now, here's the thing, though. Yeah, I know, but like, let's not take him out of context the way we would hate to be taken out of context, right? So, if you listen to his growth, right? Like Jeff was just talking about, he just read the Bible a couple years ago. He had a dramatic shift. He actually started in 2020, so it's been 5 years. I just remembered that. I don't know. That's when he started to investigate Christianity. I don't know when he really completed the Bible. That might have been 2 years ago, right? And so, thankfully, he didn't try to run through it in a few months. It sounds like he might have taken a few years at least, which is great. Doesn't mean he's going to have. I mean, after a few years of Bible study, how's a new Christian gonna? Where's a new Christian at? Tim, you were saved later in life. You weren't born a Christian. What do you think about that? Where should he be as a Christian?
I think that you're being a little too soft on him, Joe. Like, how long are you going to call him a baby Christian? Like, you know what I mean? Like, if
I was
he's
a baby
been
Christian
for 5 years.
I was a baby Christian for a good decade, and I think the longer you are steeped in secular humanism, the longer it takes to get out. So yeah, that would be why.
But if he's teaching people and asking questions with prominent people, and he's becoming kind of like a leader in a movement.
Agreed.
Then I think you can't just be like, oh, well, he's a baby Christian. And I think like if Paul was going around, he's starting churches, and he thinks like, a year later, like, you guys should be teaching people, not just,
right.
You're still milk. Like, to me, baby Christian is like milk. And I don't think he's like milk. I think if he read the whole Bible, then maybe he's not a baby Christian. And that's my take on it. But
I think he's talking about Christianity too, because there's a vacuum in the media. There's a lack of Christian knowledge and platformed Christians, and part of that's our own fault as Christians over the decades and maybe even centuries. We've squandered a lot of blessings we got 200 years ago. So,
well, listen to this one. Tucker had David Cullum, who believes that the United States should have allied with Adolf Hitler instead of the Soviet Union during World War II. Knowing what we know about the Holocaust and everything, believes, again, David Cullum believes that we should have allied with Hitler during World War II.
I mean, that's established. He interviews people he doesn't agree with.
No.
And so do we.
Joe. He is stating these things. And so my concern, Joe, is, and I told this to my wife, I said, I can present fact after fact after fact after fact, but people are so devoted to Tucker that they just won't view the reality of what's going on here. That's my concern. I mean, I could keep going here. Look, listen to this one here. Zoran Mandani. He was the story of the month of October with this big election coming up in New York City. Of course, you guys aren't too far from New York City in New Jersey. Conservative people talking about how horrible this is going to be for New York City if this man wins. Ben Shapiro talked about it a lot on his program. How many times do you think Tucker Carlson mentioned Zoran Mandani in the month leading up to this most important political event?
It's an argument from silence. I wouldn't do that to anybody.
He mentioned it once.
Mm-hmm.
And he praised the man. He praised the man because they were asked the question during the debate, what country would you like? If you could go to one country, what country would you like to go to? And he said, I don't want to go to any country. I want to stay in New York City. Okay. And I don't, whatever. That's not that bad. Okay. But here, listen to this here. with Zohar Mamdani. Okay, Zohar Mamdani, his view, he has the most radical views possible on Israel. There were rabbis who met with Mamdani before the election just to find out what, because we're concerned, you're a Muslim, we're concerned about your views on Jewish people in Israel. And Mamdani told these rabbis that he believed that Israel not only did not have a right to the land in the Middle East, but that they didn't have a right to any land anywhere. Okay, so he believes they're committing genocide. Of course, that's but Tucker said this. This is not an argument for silence, because this is what Tucker said. Is the incoming mayor a fan of Israel? Does he want America to fight its wars? Not particularly. But a Jew hater? That's a different conversation. We've never seen anything to suggest he falls into that ugly camp, because he doesn't. If you believe that Israel doesn't have a right to their land, they don't have a right to any land, that is anti-Semitism. But think about Tucker. Tucker's views on Israel are the same as the far left.
Yeah. So I'm going to say I agree with you on a lot of this, a ton of it. And I agree that people on both sides are just very, very ready to take people out of context and take their quotes. And I think people say things that they probably don't mean too. I do that as well. If I sit around and listen to my liberal friends talk about quotes from Trump, I would hate Trump too. They all hate Trump.
Joe,
don't get it.
That's not happening here.
I think it is.
That's not happening. You need to.
I want to see the video.
Yeah. Okay.
In context, because I've watched a lot of it to try and evaluate this.
Yeah. Okay. So Nigeria is one of the most persecuted nations, Christian nation. I mean, the Christians there are being horribly persecuted by the Muslim leadership. Mm-hmm. Tucker does a special on this, and he tries to explain away the government's involvement, the Islamic government's involvement in their horrible persecution of the Christians in Nigeria. Every step of the way, Tucker defends Islam and blames Israel. He has unequivocally made it clear that he is with the Ishmaelites historically and not with Isaac. And if you're a Christian, you need to oppose that, because we are people who understand God's promises to Isaac that started with Abraham.
Here's the thing. Let me just interject. He has fallen for taqiyya. Taqiyya is the Muslim's right to lie to justify an end. So Tucker has naively believed that Sharia is not that bad. Mamdani doesn't hate the Jews because he says, I don't hate the Jews. I'm not an anti-Semite. I just don't think Israel, the nation, has a right to exist. Mm. So he believes the parsing of these words because he doesn't understand Islam. Yep. He has not read or, I watched an interesting debate, and actually I don't know if I can fully recommend it because it is it's vulgar, very vulgar.
They're all vulgar. Tucker's vulgar. No, Tucker's vulgar. He's on this Sean Ryan interview, which is 3 hours long. It's extremely vulgar.
Yeah. The debater was Andrew Wilson. And Andrew Wilson, a Christian guy, but yet, talk about a baby Christian, he's very vulgar. Yep. He was debating Hakikachu. Hakikachu is one of the new Dawah guys for Islam. Mm-hmm. And Hakikachu tried to come in with all of his, rhetoric and reasons why Islam will be better for the West. They love marriage more. They're more pro-traditional values and they believe in God. That's better than the secular humanists. But what Andrew Wilson did is he came in with one point. His point was that Islam teaches cousin marriage. You can marry your first cousin. And what that does is it destroys the collective IQ of the entire nation, because the more you marry cousins, generation after generation. Muhammad, I think it's in Surah 66, talks about his wives. And 2 of them were first cousins, right? So if you do this from the 600s all the way to 2025, then the collective IQ of the nation is utterly destroyed.
Wow.
And by the end of this debate, it's hilarious because Andrew Wilson has a Kikachu defending the lower IQ, saying, well, I'd rather we get dumber so we don't become atheists, which tend, the high IQ people become atheists over time, and that's what the West is doing.
Wow.
All
That's
this to
really
say,
interesting.
It is super interesting. If you watch it, so very good debate. But the point being, Islam will lie, cheat, steal, whatever they can to take over the West.
Yeah.
And if you were to go to England right now, the threat at first was secular humanism. That's what Tucker's concerned about, liberalism,
Right.
and he thinks the Jews are behind it all. But now the real threat is that England is going to be overrun. Like London is overrun by Islam.
Yeah.
They're just outbreeding the British people, and the British people will be a minority in their own country before long.
Yeah.
And the same threat is coming to America. So the problem with Tucker Carlson is he does not discern the threat.
I think you're absolutely right on that. 100%. Yeah.
Right. And because he's taken the side of Islam, is not that bad. And it's almost like he has this seesaw. Like if I'm going to point out things against Israel, now I've got to jump on the side of Islam.
Yeah.
So he's just he's on the wrong side of the real threat, because the Jewish people are not ruling the world behind the scenes.
Is it not possible, though, that we might have multiple things being true here in play? One, his as Tim pointed out, we should not be giving him a pass on maturing as a Christian. Totally agree.
How do you know he is How do you know he is a Christian?
He claims to be a Christian.
He claims to be a Christian, but not all who possess faith in Christ, not all who profess faith in Christ possess faith in Christ. I have yet to
100%.
see. I have yet to see Christian character out of him. I mean, I'll be honest.
That's why I agree with Tim that we should not give him a pass, and he should be held accountable. And hopefully, there are people holding him accountable that are close to him. Hey, I'd love to hold him accountable myself. He can call me anytime. I'll dig in with him. But it is what it is. But what I've seen, if we contrast his focus, because I think Jeff was pointing out where his focus is, and he has I think if we can be really generous, we can all agree that he has a misguided focus on what is going on in the world, because he's more knowledgeable in one area and not as knowledgeable in another. And isn't that the problem with a lot of our pastors out there in the white and gray and blue church? They just ignore a lot of, we can't talk politics. We don't need to know anything about that. We're going to guide people, but we're not going to know anything about it. That's crazy, right? And Tucker knows way too much about politics, and he's very focused, as you said, on being a pacifist, right? And not going to war, which I actually appreciate, not because I think he is doing it for the right reasons, and I don't always agree with pacifism, but I do agree with not spilling American blood for foreign entities, and I do agree that having 800 military bases across the planet is a great way for us to spill American blood. It's not a good idea, and I don't think Christians can back that any more than they can back other things.
What about what Seth was sharing about Nigeria? Seth, tell us more about Nigeria, because, are we not to go do something? Has the Lord not given us the ability to intervene? If that Muslim government is going to be sitting by and letting Muslims slaughter our brothers and sisters, is there not a time for war? Ecclesiastes 3. And what more than that? Seth, what were you saying about Nigeria?
Yeah, well, Tucker, he does not criticize Islam. In fact, he defends them at every turn, and so the Nigerian leadership is Islamic, and they are persecuting Christians. And by the way, Judge Saul has a ministry there that helps the persecuted there, and he's friends with John Harris. And John Harris pointed this out, where he's trying to explain this away, where we need to be opposed to the Islamic leadership in Nigeria and say, stop killing the Christians there. we got to stand with our brothers and sisters in Christ in Nigeria, right? So
we do. But we have to be consistent biblically. And to answer the question, no, we don't have the right to send in American troops. We do have the right to have Christian men go over there and defend them, to volunteer. But we don't have the right to spend blood. We've been since 1917, we became the world's police, and it has been a cover-up for much sin, a huge cover-up. Over and over again. We don't even declare war anymore.
Should we not have gone to World War I and stopped Hitler in World War II?
I think we had a moral responsibility in World War II to stop Hitler because we were attacked. In World War I, no, we had no business going into that. We were drawn into that by Wilson. 1913, we got the Federal Reserve. We started making fake money, and then 1917, we did a war to cover it up. He's the second worst president ever. So, yeah. But Christians and Christian just war theory does not allow us to. I mean, if we wanted to make Israel a state of the United States, then we could. If we were attacked, we could go and defend them. Same thing with Ukraine. We shouldn't be doing it in Ukraine, and we can't be consistent with our Ukraine and Israeli policy as conservatives who say we shouldn't be fighting in Ukraine, but we want to fight in Israel now. And I know we're not fighting physically in either one of those, but we're sending weapons and we're sending resources. And that's the problem.
Yeah. For me on that, I actually trust Donald Trump's judgment on that more than most. I think he understands how to put pressure on both sides, and he's not committing, American soldiers to the battlefield. Mm-hmm. He is pressuring Trump, and he's actually soured on Putin's side. He's recognizing that it's Putin that's unwilling to come to the table. Mm-hmm. I think so. He's ratcheting up the pressure that way.
Yeah. So Joe, let me ask you this.
Sure.
Do you have any policies that are in agreement with the far left?
Do I personally agree that the far left is good in any way?
Whether it's economics, abortion, foreign policy, the environment, do you have any policy that you agree with the far left?
So I don't think the far left is one entity. I'm sure there's disagreeing things within it, but I can't think of any.
Okay.
I can't think of any.
I think I can answer that for you. I mean, knowing what I know about you, I would say absolutely not. Joe does not have.
But there's certain things that the left and the right agree with that I disagree with.
Okay, but you have to understand there's something called horseshoe theory. When the far, like the extreme right and the extreme left, they actually have identical views. The horseshoe comes.
Yes, they do. In certain things. Those are the things I disagree with.
So this is where I hope your eyes are opened here. Tucker's views on Israel are the same as the far left. And that should cause alarms to go off. Like, he has gone down the wrong path here.
I disagree that his opinions are. Does he get in interview? Here's what I'm going to say. I agree with you. He says stupid things in interviews that are 3 hours long. Guys, can you imagine us interviewing people 3 hours long? I'm just going to be like, I don't even know what I'm saying Joe, at that second hour.
Joe, how are Tucker's views different on Israel than Omar Ilhan?
Listen, I pulled out some quotes from the clip we were thinking about putting on, which I think we're way over that at this point, but I pulled out some quotes, what he said, and specifically what he's saying about the Nick Fuentes interview, right? And he says this, he says, the only way to stop bad ideas is by countering them with good ideas. You want to defeat lies, tell the truth. It's literally that simple. No one has actually rebutted Fuentes' substantive political claims, e.g., AIPAC money, foreign influence. They just scream Nazi. And he says if someone who is opposed and sincerely opposed to hating people based on their bloodline, referring to Israel, interviews Nick Fuentes and is like, hey, stop with the Jew hatred, but let's talk about let's talk about the undue influence a foreign country has over our government. Those are entirely reasonable conversations, and they're scary because they are reasonable. So his disagreement with Israel is not not because he's a Jew hater, and he made that very clear. That's his statement. He says, but he doesn't like the undue influence of any foreign country over our government. And I think during Trump's first 60 days and Doge, we found out that every country in the world has influence over our government. That's a massive problem.
What's different about AIPAC than any other lobbying group?
Nothing.
Can the Jews not use their own money to try to influence? These are Americans who live in America who love Israel, and they try to get meetings with congressmen and senators and try to say, hey, vote to protect us. Can a senator not listen to a Jew and still make up his own mind about whatever he wants?
That's a really good point. I think it brings up the problem of dual citizenship. You need to be loyal to one country or another. You shouldn't have dual citizenship. You should pick one.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So, he's saying, he's sounding the alarm, saying Nick Fuentes is saying things about Israel. If Israel was not in the Middle East, can you imagine how horrible that would be? With Islam, they would take over, and their presence in the Middle East actually keeps Islam at bay. You don't want Islam to take over your nation, right? Sharia law is a horrible thing. The people who live in these nations in the Middle East, they're treated horribly by their leadership, right? So, and Israel is opposed to that. So when America supports Israel, it actually is America first. And actually Trump understands this, which is why he's pro-Israel. He understands that there's not a contradiction between supporting Israel and being America first, because when we support Israel, we actually benefit from it, right? And when has America ever spilled blood on behalf of Israel? And we went to Iraq, we went to Afghanistan. That had nothing to do with Israel. It had to do with the belief that there was weapons of mass destruction.
Do you think those were just wars?
I disagree with them. I'm against endless wars. I'm against, the Afghanistan one made more sense than Iraq, I would say, because I think, Saddam wasn't as, he was evil, but he kind of kept things at bay. So, but yeah, that's the thing. Like, we're not fighting. This is the narrative they're presenting. People like Tucker and the people he has on his program, that we are fighting Israel's wars for them when that's not what's taking place. Israel, when we go to war, Israel's there for us. There's going to come a day where we're not going to be there for Israel. And this is where biblical prophecy comes into it, right? You see the story of, Gog of Magog in the book of Ezekiel. The nations there's going to be a hook that's going to go in their mouth, and the nations are going to be drawn to Israel, and no one is going to come to their defense, which makes me wonder, are we seeing this playing out in our day right now, where everybody is turning their back on Israel? The hook is being put in their mouth, the nations, and everyone's going to turn against them. No one's going to come to Israel's defense, but God is going to supernaturally protect them. That's what Scripture tells us, right? So with Tucker, I have a hard time saying that, he's just going a little bit off here. Listen to some people talk. Dinesh D'Souza has done a really good job. Ben Shapiro has done a good job exposing Tucker. There seems to be, he's being funded by Islam. Okay, that's not, that's what the facts are saying. He's being funded by Islam, and then he's saying things that are against Israel, and he's defending Islam. That's a dark agenda that we're talking about here.
I don't disagree. All those things are problematic, and those are questions we should be asking. What I would disagree with is his own description of himself is that he is not a Jew hater. He's not anti-Semitic, and he does not. He just doesn't want us to. He just doesn't agree with the funding and the money and the influence. And I don't. I've for a long time recognized that just war theory prevents us from a lot of the military engagements we're involved in, and as Christians, we should oppose it. But at the same time, yeah, I mean, there's reasons for war, but I mean that has to be fleshed out. I just think we got to let the man say, I am this or I am that. I hate when people say that guy's a racist, and that guy will say, I'm not a racist. I mean, quite frankly, I think Jeff mentioned this in another podcast. Nobody wants to be a racist in this culture. It's the biggest sin ever, according to our secular world. You can't be a racist, but we label people that way, and I just want to be careful Joe, on how we label them.
Joe, doesn't Satan hate the Jews? Does Satan have a special hatred for them?
Does he hate all the Jews?
Does he have a special hatred?
He hates the true Jews. He hates the true Jews that love God. But does he hate the secular Jews, or is he very content with the secular Jews?
How does he know though? The secular Jews might be among the people who are saved in the end. How does he know? He doesn't know that.
How does Satan know? I don't know what he knows.
Satan doesn't know that. So he hates all of them. Why did he try to annihilate them during the Holocaust? Because he understands. Satan knows the Bible. He's been studying it for thousands of years.
I'm not going to judge his heart. Black as I know it is from Scripture.
No. Satan understands what the Bible says. He understands that when Jesus comes back to the earth, he's going to come back to the Mount of Olives. Where's the Mount of Olives? The Mount of Olives is in the Middle East. It's in the land of Canaan. It's in Jerusalem. Jesus is going to come down to the Mount of Olives, and the natural branches who have been grafted in, as Romans 11 says, all Israel will be saved. They will look on me whom they have pierced. So they're going to believe in the Lord Jesus Christ in that day. Satan knows that's coming. So if he can wipe Israel off the face of the earth, he keeps God's plans from unfolding in the future. So
does Jesus want us? Does Jesus care more about us being consistent in our description of how our morals, how we execute our morals, or does he want us, or does he care more about us figuring out future things and how we should act to make those happen? Because I just don't think that's a good argument. I think consistency in obedience is more important.
So the end times doesn't matter then?
I didn't say that. Of course it matters.
That's
why I asked the question. What does he care more about?
God cares about how we treat our wife, how we treat our children, how we treat anybody, right? How pastors
love our neighbor, how we love our neighbor. And we can't love our neighbor by committing our neighbor's blood to a foreign war.
Okay, but if the Bible tells us how the end is going to take place, shouldn't we know that? I mean,
absolutely,
it's revelation.
Knowing it, and saying that we have to have a policy based on it at our quote unquote Christian nation secular government.
Well,
is a different story.
Okay, so Benjamin Netanyahu and the Israeli government, they keep the people of Israel, the offspring of Abraham, in the land that was given to them.
I'm all for that.
Yeah,
I'm all for it.
And yet Tucker Carlson calls Netanyahu completely evil.
And I hope Tucker's watching this, and I hope he looks into Sharia law, and I hope he comes and listens to our podcast more. In fact, I hope he comes on our podcast, because I'd like to ask him some of these questions.
Yeah,
I think they're good questions.
Yep.
What I don't think is good is taking from Ben Shapiro a narrative and applying it to somebody else. I think that's gossip. It's not coming right from him. It's definitely not something that would be acceptable, say, in a court of law. You couldn't say, well, he's this. What does he say he is? What actions would he defend himself with, right? So, and I think we're very careful in most situations, but I think because eschatology is so important, Israel is so important, that we may need to be a little more careful.
Yeah. I mean, you guys can, Jeff, you and Tim, you guys can jump in here. But the reason I want people who are listening to this to understand that there is a dark agenda that's at work here, and because of Tucker's credibility, because of the credibility that he's had in the past, I think he has become an instrument of the devil, and I hope he repents. I don't want him to stay in that place. But when you're defending the most violent religion in the world, I remember seeing a stat about 90% of the violence in the world comes from Islam. If you are defending that, and you're not defending the same people who have the ethics of the Old Testament, the people of Israel, and they've been influenced by Christianity too, because they're a Western nation in the Middle East. These are our friends, right? We are supposed to bless these people. We're supposed to love them. We should have a special love for them. But the opposite is taking place. They're being seen as uniquely evil. That's demonic. We have to stand against that. Every Christian should stand against that.
Coming out of Episcopalian background, and I'm just glad that he's not completely off the rails as a Christian. I mean, he seems to be going in the right direction. He needs some discipleship, 100%.
Tim, is he going in the right direction? So, Tim, you got to listen to our first debate on TDHP. We had Pastor Seth versus Average Joe, but now we have Pastor Tim, and he can give the verdict. Who won the debate, Tim?
Oh, man. Who won the debate? Here, can you guys, I'm going to grab both your hands. Can you, kind of hold them out? And I'm going to lift up. Seth is the winner. Only because I agree with Seth, and Joe is saying he's heading toward the right direction. I hope he is, but all the tells are saying no, he's going in the wrong direction, and he might be being used by Satan to say these things. He might be making deals with the Muslims, and you're saying, no, this guy's great. I don't know if he's that great.
He
Joe.
might be. He very well. Yeah. That Sharia law thing and the $15 million. That's a very good point. That was your strongest point. 100%. Yeah. I 100% agree with that. Okay. That is a big problem. 15 million big problem.
On the side of protecting Israel. I don't want to be found as someone who's going against Israel. So I lean more towards that, protecting Israel and not going against Israel. So I don't know, Joe, what do you think about Israel? Do you love Israel? Do you only love the people who are born again Christians that are Israel? Or for me, although I know that they're not born again Christians, I'm fascinated by that people as a group.
I love Israel. What I hate is the intellectual dishonesty of our government and how we have foreign policy that is inconsistent and regularly immoral. There's a lot of things wrong with our military, and the way that we're spread out across the planet is a massive problem. We're an empire, but we don't own up to it. If we're an empire and we're ruling things, then maybe we should rule things. Then that might be different. I mean, I have no problem with the Crusades, or most of them, although, and I think we also need to be honest that whenever you have a war, there are atrocities that happen. I mean, we have just war theory. It's a theory for a reason, because unfortunately, whenever we have conflict, both sides sin, right? So, but I love Israel, and I think that we should do everything we can. In fact, I think it would be great if Americans who are younger than me, because I'm too old to fight, but who would volunteer to go over there. I think it's way too inconsistent for us to pledge blood and to Israel or to any foreign nation, and I think it's unjust for us to take that. And you know where it's going to come from? It's going to come from poor people. And that's what these guys are arguing about, right? That's what they spend the majority of their time on it. Do they say a couple of things that, we take it out of context? We're like, that's horrible. And even in context, it's not good, right? Agreed. Mm-hmm. Yeah. But that's where I'm at. I listen, I really think we need to be consistent in order to be able to share the gospel with people. We need to show people how consistent the Bible is on all these matters. And if there's an area of inconsistency and it might not end up with the result that we like, we don't want to be results oriented. We want to be principle oriented, biblically principle oriented. And that's why I have the position I have.
Also, one more thing I want to clear up that was from a while ago. We were talking about how, I guess a certain amount of Muslims, they want to see people get together with their cousins so the population gets dumber. And because apparently some people were saying, oh, that's a good idea because really smart people don't come to Christ. But that's not entirely true, because Pastor Jeff and Seth and Joe, those are all above average people to me, but also the person with the highest IQ in the world, and I think Jeff mentioned this in one of his recent sermons,
this
is
week.
a born-again Christian with an IQ of 270-something. So you can't go off that, because the Lord will save whom he wants and harden whom he wants.
And that guy's a Chinese guy, right, Jeff?
Yep, Chinese.
Yes, he is. Let me weigh in, and then Seth, you can give us a closing statement. So my summary of the Tucker Carlson problem is, one, naivete to the special hatred, the demonic hatred against the Jews, which is coming from people like Nick Fuentes and Candace Owens and, you know, the more firebrands out there that have like a unique hatred. By platforming them without pushing back, he is actually helping their cause along. This is a special problem talked about in Romans chapter 11, when it says, if some of the branches were broken off and you, although a wild olive shoot, were grafted in among the others and now share in the nourishing root of the olive tree, do not be arrogant toward the branches. There will be a problem throughout Christian history and just world history of people becoming arrogant toward the Jews. And that's particularly even in Christian countries. This is the problem in Germany when Hitler and all of the Nazis deceived the Christians of that land. This problem has happened all through Christian history. Dennis Prager wrote Why the Jews. There are a number of other books that are documenting that this is not a new phenomenon. It is always precipitated by a rising tide of just irrational blaming of the Jews, as if they're running the world behind the scenes. They're behind the great cabal, you know, the Rothschilds and everybody actually run the world. But that's actually a demonic hatred of the Jews. And Tucker is naive to that. The amount that he talks about the Jews, you know, he mentioned Mom Donnie once, I guess, Seth, you said, but how many times has he talked about the Jews over the last 6 months? Thousands upon thousands.
Crazy.
He is naive to what's fueling that. There is a demonic hatred for the Jews. And then secondly, he is
really good point.
He is very naive about the dangers of Sharia. What he said on that Greenwald show where he laughed it off like, oh, some poor girl in Afghanistan can't get her PhD. No, she is probably 10 years old when she is going to be married off to some old man, and the birth rates will be so high in Afghanistan because these little girls, as soon as they hit puberty, are getting pregnant by these old men that they're farmed off to, child brides. And it's oftentimes a first cousin. And it is, to be a girl, a woman in Afghanistan or Pakistan, we have no compassion if we downplay that. It is a horrible thing. They have to be covered head to toe under the dark veil of Islam and live their life like that. The sexual abuse that happens to girls, and it began with Muhammad with Aisha. He married a 6-year-old and consummated the marriage at age 9. And that's what the Dawah guys are now defending. They can no longer pretend that Muhammad didn't have a child bride. They now say, well, it's okay as long as she's hit puberty.
Oh, they call it an honor.
Yeah. Yeah. In fact, the 70 virgins that they hope to get in the next life are, it says in the Hadith, their breasts are just beginning to bud, just beginning to form. So they're not even fully pubescent.
Mm.
And that's the virgins that they get for 70 years. So these Muslims who are searching for that and hoping for that in their so-called paradise are going to be perpetual, forever, eternal pedophiles. That's what Islam is teaching them to hope for.
Mm-hmm.
Tucker Carlson is utterly naive to what the Hadith actually teach, what Sharia actually is, and the effect that it actually has in a culture. Because he goes to Abu Dhabi and says, oh, look, this is a great place to live. But he doesn't realize Abu Dhabi is trying to emulate the West and moving away from real Sharia, but places where Islam is taking over and is actually the majority, that's the worst fate for humanity that you could possibly imagine. So, yeah, Tucker Carlson is like a shill that is enabling this. And I think it does have a lot to do with him being Tucker Carlson. not Tucker Carlson. He's taking Qatari money and he's funded.
Yeah. Amen.
That may be true.
Yeah.
Seth, closing statement. Really well said, by the way, Pastor Jeff. That was awesome.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Was.
Again, I went from loving Tucker Carlson to being very concerned about the man. And I didn't even bring this point up. A month before Charlie Kirk died, Nick Fuentes said some horrible things about Charlie Kirk. Horrible things. And a month later, of course, September 10th, Charlie Kirk is savagely murdered in Utah. And about 6 to 8 weeks later, Tucker Carlson has Nick Fuentes on his program. Doesn't ask one question about what Nick Fuentes said about supposedly his friend, Charlie Kirk. I think that's very curious. Tucker Carlson spoke at Charlie Kirk's memorial service. If someone said something to Jeff or to any of you, Joe or Tim, and I had the opportunity to interview them, you better believe I'm going to ask them, what did you say about my friend? Right? So he appears like he's getting money. He's it looks to me like he's using Turning Point USA to build his own platform. It's just very, very, very suspicious. Okay, so that's why I'm like, anybody who's listening to this, be very, very careful with Tucker Carlson. Okay, be very, very careful. There are people out there who we just cannot trust. Okay, and we need to have discernment. And it doesn't mean, obviously, he has said lots of good things in the past. I've appreciated a lot of what he's done in the past. But isn't that how the devil works? Let's get someone to say lots of true things and then take a dark turn where people will follow that person down that dark path with that teacher. So I'm afraid that that's what we're seeing with Tucker Carlson.
All right.
Okay. Well, hey, I feel like I should have argued less just to show my consistency with not arguing with guests, which is what I do in a lot of cases because it's not going to bear fruit. And I want those people to come on board. And I think Tucker Carlson does the same thing. In fact, he said that Nick Fuentes, he originally engaged with him because the guy slandered his father, his wife, and his children, which, I mean, Tucker's unique in that way. I mean, I'd have problems. I'd have problems restraining myself. I think I've mentioned before, Pastor Jeff restrained me from slandering some people on the web. It would have been slander. I wouldn't think it was. But anyway, great interview, Seth. Great idea to have this conversation. I think it was, I think it's wonderful. We got to look at all these, especially, it doesn't matter who's right or wrong. It matters that we're being discerning and looking. I mean, it does ultimately matter, but us having disagreements over what we're perceiving doesn't matter.
Well, Joe, that's how you often come to a knowledge of the truth. Debate.
Amen.
Christians are not afraid of debate. And Joe, I love every pushback that you gave because that's what you were thinking. And we want to work these things through and listen and learn. That's Proverbs 18:17. That's what the world can't do, but we as Christians can model to the world. That we're actually able to listen without being so thin-skinned that we can't hear a different opinion. We can work it through together.
And Joe, you're rarely wrong. This is one of the only times I ever thought that you might have been on the losing side of a debate.
Time will tell. I don't know yet either.
Was this the first?
But who am I to judge?
Was this the first debate in TDHP history? No, we've had some debates. We had Luke and Eric.
Oh yeah,
Luke and Ardell too. Yeah. So
yeah, Christian hedonism, right? Yep.
Yep.
So Ardell and Joe are 0-1, and Luke and Seth are 1-0.
Well, are we gonna wait and see what the comments say? On the platforms.
If I'm one of the judges, that's my vote.
I will predict that the comments will probably slant in Joe's favor. Because what ends up happening is there is so much fervor on the anti-Israel side that they flood comment boxes whenever this discussion happens. It's all against Israel. So, I mean, usually that doesn't happen on TDHP, but even here, I'll bet some people will jump on. So maybe me saying this will discourage them from trying to bash Israel in our comment section.
They probably didn't even make it this far in the video anyway.
I think there's they don't make it this far, and I wonder if anyone will get this far and wonder what the heck I meant
If
by
you did get
dispense-
this far, thank you for watching.
Yep.
Yeah,
We
amen.
appreciate your viewership.
Yep. But I totally agree with Jeff's comment. By the way, I'm like, you're gonna get hate if you take a pro-Israel stance. But here we are. So
there's a lot of pro-Israelites too. I mean, like, but here's the thing, like, is there's more than two categories, right? There's got to be more than pro or against Israel.
Mm-hmm.
So
okay, all right. Well, this is a good time to wrap it up.
Yep.
Seth, it's your birthday. Why don't you do the ending for us?
Okay. You guys got to help me with this. I'm sorry. I'm only on once a month. Tim, for my birthday, can you please help me?
If you see a brother down, lift him up. If you see a high place,
Tear it
tear it down.
I thought you guys.
Oh, well, I of course
Hated each
hated
other.
Nick Fuentes, and well, going back to what I was just saying, he criticized my dad, also criticized my wife and my son, but
I don't know much about him.
well, I was super pissed at him. He was 27, and he criticized my dad. In fact,
Why were you pissed at him? Because he criticized you?
not allowed to criticize my dad. I'm his oldest son. Those are just the rules. Can't stand
Yeah.
that. My father was a flawed man,
What did he?
but a great man. Oh, CIA guy, and he did all this bad shit. He was involved in Iran-Contra. And some of it was true, or sort of true, or true enough, I guess. So that made it worse. It didn't matter. Whatever he said about my dad, but my father just died, and I was like, I can't. That just drives me absolutely insane. So, and I feel an obligation to be mad about it because it's my dad. Those are the rules. So, I attacked him, and then I called him, and I was like, look, I don't know you, but I want you to know why. I always want to tell people why I don't like them, and I want to do it right to their face. And I always call people and just say, I'm going to attack you, or I did attack you, and I want you to
I'm not
hear
Muslim.
why
I'm not for
from
Sharia
me.
law. On the other hand, compared to what? Compared
just
to
did that.
Baltimore?
In England, it's
Yesterday
4 out of
to
10
somebody.
British
Anyway,
Muslims.
I
In
always do.
France,
And so I called Nick
29%
Fuentes and I said,
of French
I want you
Muslims
to
would
know
like
why I
to see it
attacked you. I
replace
attacked you.
French law.
You know, if
because
people
you
want to get
criticized
wasted,
my
they do it
father.
at home. You know what
And
I
I
mean?
just,
Yeah, I
Oh,
don't
boy, I
accept
hope we
that.
don't wind up with
my
that.
father
But
was a
I've
great
seen a
man,
bunch of polls
flawed, but a
like
great
this
man, like a
that
literally
show
great
that the
man.
attitudes
and,
of faithful
never accepted that. And
Muslims
he, to
are
his
not
credit, was like,
Western at
I get
all,
that.
and that they include a
get that.
tolerance of violence
So-
you don't find
but I
among,
still
say,
didn't like him.
Presbyterians or Jews.
Not
You
friends
know?
with him now.
Shut up.
But
Sharia
I,
law.
Meanwhile, a
because of
California
that,
imam is apologizing after
I
he
got a
referred
lot
to
of input
Jews
from
as
people.
filth.
Like, I don't know that
O
much
Allah,
about Nick
liberate
Fuentes.
the
I'm
Allah
56. I
Samad
don't
from the filth
look
of
at
the
internet,
Jews.
so I don't
O
really know
Allah,
that
count
much.
them
I've seen
one by
clips.
one and
He's very
annihilate them
talented, I
down
know
to the
that.
very last one. Do
But
not
I'm not
spare
an
any of
expert
them.
on that
And
at all. And I got calls from a lot of people, including some very influential people who knew a lot about Nick Fuentes. And they're like, this kid is the single most influential figure among young white men, and not just white, actually.
Is that true?
Oh, it's definitely true. I mean, it was true last month. I don't know if it's true now. I mean, everything changes. Who knows? But that was definitely my impression, and I think it's right. And in the subsequent weeks, I've asked a million different people, Nick Fuentes, and like, yes, he's extremely influential among young men.
Wow, how young? What age
They're
group?
20s, teens and 20s, college students, high school students, college students, just out of college, can't find a job. They can't find jobs, right? A lot of this, by the way, a lot of the frustration is economic, which no one wants to talk about or seems invited to talk about. It's not about the Jews. It's about the economy. And it's about the betrayal that young men feel when they go through all these hoops and get all these stupid degrees and find out they're worth nothing. And they're in $300,000 in debt. And like, I did what you told me to do and I'm fucked. So I'm mad at you. And why wouldn't they be? They have every right to be. That's my personal opinion, but it's just true. Anyway, and a lot of those men watch Nick Fuentes. So I was like, and I want to give people a chance to speak for themselves. Because I think every person from Idi Amin to Mother Teresa has an inherent right to tell their own story. And you can disagree with the story and you can doubt the story and you can do whatever you want. But to say they don't have a right to tell their story, I just reject that. I disagree. And I feel like it's not my only mission in life, but that's one of my beliefs. And I've done what I can with my limited attention and means to like give people a place to tell their story. Why should people on the internet have a right to define anybody with 2-minute clips and that person doesn't have a right to tell his own story? I just reject that. I don't care. I reject that whether it's Hillary Clinton or Nick Fuentes or anyone in between. People have a right to say what they think. And if you want to watch it, don't. So I just believe that, and I'll never stop believing that. And if they don't have that right, what you're really saying is other people have a right to speak for someone else. And they don't. They don't, because we're all created by God and we all have the right to say what we think. So I believe that. So I was like, yeah, if I have Nick Fuentes on, obviously probably some people will criticize me just as they did with Putin. You know, you love Nick Fuentes. You agree with everything he says. No, I've interviewed war criminals in Liberia. I've interviewed cannibals. I kind of liked them, just being honest. I kind of like everybody I interview.
Did you guys break bread together?
Me and the cannibals? No. And by the way, this was in Africa, and I did not lecture them about cannibalism, which I'm totally opposed to. But anyway, so I did, and it was really interesting. And I try not to lecture people just in general, because I don't like being lectured at all. And I don't think most people do. And I think the purpose of lecturing people usually is self-aggrandizing. The point of lecturing, Sean Ryan, you're a bad person. Unlike me, I'm a great person. I don't have the need to convince people I'm a great person at all. I just don't feel that need. They can decide for themselves. And I feel like that's a really dishonest way to interview people. You're using them as a man uses a prostitute for his own pleasure. So I'm using you to make a statement about myself. I'm not doing that. I don't need to do it. I don't want to do it, and I'm not doing it. So I'm not going to lecture Putin about his war crimes. You can read about Putin all you want. I want to hear what Putin says. And I took that exact same approach with Nick Fuentes. And I knew there would be, an outcry or whatever. Probably understated it a little bit.